Hi guys, Ed here on Friday, talking to you about all things workplace relations and COVID-19. Still in a good mood, still hearing about great success stories coming through of people getting their JobKeeper. I hope that that's a common theme with a lot of you today. Just a couple of shout outs to people that I've been speaking to. Clive over at Overboard Cafe, who I promised to come and see when I'm over in Perth. And he got his JobKeeper overnight, which is great. Second client actually in the restaurant industry in Hillary's. That's interesting. Anyway, I'll have to visit both of you when I come over. Who else have I got? I've also had a message from Daniel at Remax in Toowoomba. He's had some good news overnight as well. So really good stuff coming through, guys. Good to hear. Actually, they're a real estate client in that situation because of the challenges and questions that real estate have had around whether they were going to get JobKeeper with commission-only people and credit debit people and so forth. So it looks like there's someone there that it's come through for, which is great. We're hearing more and more success stories out here through our JobKeeper help guys who have been helping specific businesses that have needed help, often with pretty tricky questions. And they've been helping those out there starting to come through as well. So some really good news. If on the flip side of that coin, anyone's hearing anything else, I'd love to hear from you guys if you're getting any challenges in getting JobKeeper. Remember, the deadline's not until the 14th, so you may not have heard yet. My recommendation is not to worry too much if you haven't yet. Just sit tight for now, see what happens over the course of the weekend and into Monday. So there's a bit about JobKeeper. A lot going on at the moment. We've got news coming out in New Zealand that on Monday we're going to hear about when they're moving to what they call level 2. I am starting with that because I think they're pretty interesting insights as to what we might start to see over here coming out of the National Cabinet meeting, which is occurring as we speak. Now, the reason I think they might be related is that Jacinda Ardern was in the National Cabinet meeting about a week ago now, and I'd struggle to believe that they weren't at least trying to think in alignment as to what New Zealand might be doing and what Australia might be doing if in due course we're going to have some sort of travel permissions between the two countries. But there's sort of not much that we know yet other than a bit of rumour and innuendo from Australia. In New Zealand, though, they're going to be pretty expansive at level 2 whenever that is. They, for example, look at reopening community sports. Even some professional sports are going to be able to play but behind closed doors. So some quite interesting things they're taking, given that they had a much firmer lockdown than we had here in Australia, taking a much more open-minded view by the looks of it under their level 2 whenever that starts. In Australia, the rumours, I suppose, that we're starting to see, and you may well have read the same things I have on this, is that there looks like there's going to be a 3-stage plan lifting restrictions. It seems like outdoor spaces predominantly are going to get less restrictive in the first phase. In that respect, think of parks and pools. The second phase, maybe churches, cafes, bars and gyms. They're talking about having a month between each of these phases. Apparently, this is all rumour and innuendo. My sources are no better than yours on this. And then finally, gyms in the second phase, finally cinemas, nightclubs and beauticians. It's a real sad one there for me, for the beauticians. We've got a lot of clients in that space. But remembering, of course, that you've still got hairdressers that are open, barbers and hairdressers are open at the moment. And you know what, if I was in that industry, that's the sort of thing that would be really sending me straight back into that stage 0 crisis, denial, frustration mindset, in that you just feel bloody unfairly treated, frankly, if that is right, that you're going to end up, particularly a number of you and a number of clients have reached out, and they do hair and beauty quite logically, and they're saying, oh, look, I can keep half my shop open, my staff on the other side can't. What am I meant to do about it? So I hope a bit of sense prevails, because there's a few things there that do seem a bit nonsensical to me, and they do have big consequential impacts on you guys. The other consequential impacts I just want to talk about briefly is the concept of being workplace ready. We are, as I've spoken about before, helping out our clients on the workplace ready positioning. We're going out to them and helping them for free as part of the service we provide them to ensure that they're getting workplace ready. We've also put up on our website, if you go on there, employsure.com.au/workplace ready, you can see various resources that are now live on there, which include various things that a few of you asked about yesterday, which is downloadable templates for getting back to business, and some basic templates for things like where you can put on your maximum room capacity. Are they amendable, guys, online, or are they going PDF? No, they're not amendable. They are amendable. Yeah. Okay, so you can go on and amend documents like that. Things like the washing hands templates, various other templates are all on there now. So go and have a look there, guys, and they're all there for free if you want and need them. And for our clients, we'll specifically be coming out and working with you. Before I go on to the I suppose the challenging side of being workplace ready, I just want to do a quick shout out. I was talking about this yesterday. This is the 4 Pillars hand sanitizer that you'll have seen possibly in the media, that they've pivoted very interestingly and started creating this hand sanitizer as a byproduct of their distilling process for in their gin distillation. It's a great bottle, isn't it? It's fantastic. But I'll have to keep that away from my wife in case she thinks it's gin. But no, it's a great pivot. We've purposely gone it, and this is no product placement, guys. We won't have bought this. We didn't. It wasn't a freebie, but we want to support our client in doing that, and we're going to have that around our workplace as part of our effort to support our clients through this as well. Now, my frustration on getting workplace ready is this, and I'm really keeping an eagle eye on what is going to be happening over the next 24 hours when we hear from the National Cabinet, equally on Monday when New Zealand starts talking about this. Because I was reading in detail some stuff about the UK last night, and they are without sort of any sense of irony or anything like that, the level of things that they're suggesting need to be done in workplaces would just be absolutely torturous here. They're not only that, but massively costly. So I'm hoping what we get is a pragmatism out of the government on this. So to give some examples, in the UK, they're saying that if you don't have 2 meters between your desks, 2 meters is a big space between desks. We're pretty generous on our desk sizes, and they're just over 1.5 meters. But if you don't have 2 meters, they're saying every desk has to have a plastic screen between them. I stress this is in the UK. This is not what we're doing here at the moment. I dearly hope the government is more practical than this. But imagine that situation where if every business that had people sitting within, and we're not just talking about big volumes of people, this is every business that has more than one person who is sitting within 2 meters of each other had to go and get a plastic screen. We'd get a run on plastic screens. No one would be able to get ready. To be workplace ready, no one will be able to get back to work. They're also talking about having big templates on the floors with like a sort of 2 meter circumference around your desk so that people know not to step inside your bubble, so to speak. Great for the business that pivots and starts creating those floor templates, but for small businesses to be going out and spending money at this time on the costly impacts of changing your workspaces and buying perspex screens and floor templates, let alone the time wasted in having to get them implemented, would be extraordinary. So I hope that we're being a bit more pragmatic than the UK in this. Certainly the approach, as we discussed yesterday in the session that we're taking here, is a very adult one. We provide the set of requirements, and we request people don't end up sort of hovering around the proverbial water cooler together. And we'll monitor that and check that people are being sensible. But starting to stick things on the floor with too much zeal, I suppose, it just seems a bit odd to me. But I'm not against using some sensible approaches I'm seeing in public spaces, and we'll look to implement for our clients if it's the right step. For example, having tape on floors to help people just get a rough understanding as to what they should be doing, so they're not getting too close. We've seen some of that successfully deployed in public spaces, but we're going to be balancing very carefully for our clients the cost and pragmatism of doing the things that the government asks. What we don't want to be doing is setting up worlds in which we're creating huge expense, or the government is creating huge expense for you guys, and it is also preventing you from getting open as quickly as you possibly can. That would just be a massive own goal, and I dearly hope the government doesn't go in that direction. So let's keep our eyes peeled for any announcements. Normally Scott Morrison has a bad habit of coming out right in the middle of this live stream, so I'm assuming he hasn't come out at this stage, guys. No sign of the National Cabinet finishing by the sounds of it. The other tidbits of good news, I suppose, just generally speaking, I think that you guys will have seen what I'm seeing, which is the public narrative is improving. I think that's helping business. We're all very much in small business land. We're very exposed to that public narrative and sentiment, and people seem to be out and about much more. People seem to be returning to some form of normal. Again, using my coffee test, it took me another 15 minutes to get my coffee this morning, which was getting increasingly frustrating. I'm beginning to think I quite liked it when it was quiet, but I shouldn't wish that on anyone. So let's get on to the questions, Stewie, and see what people have got to ask today.
Can we start with a couple of comments, actually, just to kick things off? Brenda says, we received our first JobKeeper payment overnight. Thank you, Ed, and all the team at EmploySure. You've helped guide us through this time. Very much appreciated. Jules says, hi, Ed and Stu. I asked a question yesterday and your staff answered at 10 p.m. last night. So a shout out, massive thanks to you all. Trevor from Willow's Preschool, clients of EmploySure's JobKeeper funds received overnight. So general relief coming through.
That's great. Great, Trevor. Great. I'm pleased that we're providing that service late this evening as well. That's what we do. I always we talk about a bit of a mantra here at EmploySure that we try to provide advice both at the right time and at the right price. So it's not, for me, giving that customer service. Most of us as small business owners, well, don't operate on normal 9 to 5. So I'm pleased to hear that you're getting use late at night on the service there. So that's good news. Good, and I'm pleased. Hopefully that what you found there. I think who was the first comment there from?
From Brenda.
Brenda. That I don't know if Brenda's a JobKeeper Help client, but if she's not, and she's just been getting some support through this, I'm pleased that I'm genuinely, and I hope that you realise this in watching this, that I'm genuinely pleased if we're just able to help small businesses at this time. Regardless of whether you're a client of ours or regardless of whether you've become a JobKeeper Help client of ours. And it's the same with this workplace ready stuff now. We are certainly we're going to be rolling out red carpets and probably black and yellow striped carpets for our clients as we get them workplace ready. But I want to help everyone to get back to work. Frankly speaking, it's what I want to do, but it is also indirectly to my benefit, and I want this economy working as well as anyone, so that my business works as well as anyone else's. So those templates that are on our website, employsure.com.au/workplace ready, do use them. Let's start discussing on here what being workplace ready looks like. What you will have seen possibly in the newspapers today is a bit of a distillation of what you can get on the Safe Work website. The themes that you see on the Safe Work website are more frequent cleaning. Question mark for me, what's the cost benefit of that? Do we really, as businesses, want to be cleaning to such a degree that it's going to create an extra financial burden on us at this time? What is a reasonable level of cleaning? We can help you with questions like that. And then some of the other general principles are really just insofar as possible doing social distancing in the workplace. And obviously in things like hospitality, that's going to be an interesting challenge as you work out the ability to run a profitable business with social distancing requirements. So anything else?
Yeah, let's get down to some nuts and bolts. From Paul, we have a staff member who has gone on maternity leave. How does this work with JobKeeper?
Hi, Paul. So it will depend a bit on whether that staff member's eligible for any paid parental leave. So they would get paid for any fortnights they're not otherwise getting paid parental leave in. So you'll need to check with them to see what their situation is on that.
This from John. My real estate agent said that when I get JobKeeper payment, I have to use it to pay my small business rent in full. I'm currently paying half rent. Is this true?
JobKeeper's got nothing to do with your commercial rent arrangements. I think that translating, I suppose, what the real estate agent might be saying there is, hey, your business is now getting propped up. Surely you're in a position to pay your rent at a full rate again. And that's really a commercial negotiation between you and the real estate agent. They certainly can't force you to use JobKeeper to pay rent. You need to negotiate with them and help them understand what your financial circumstances are and what you can afford to do under the terms of your rental agreement.
This timely question from Melanie. Hi, Ed. How do we know whether our application for JobKeeper has been approved?
Hi, Melanie. You don't, unfortunately, until you start getting payment, as we're seeing from people. I can see a client there at Eastlake Swim Centre saying they've just had payment. Great stuff. But Melanie, don't worry if you haven't got it yet. Brenda says, she's replied to you, Melanie. Brenda's done my job for me. She says it just turned up in our account and no notice. So you won't know, Melanie, until you get the money. If you don't get the money, the government's required to, or ATO is required to tell you why not. But don't stress about it at the moment. It's until the 14th of May. And even then, whilst we're seeing a lot of people get paid, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a slight lag for some people. Again, hats off to the government for getting it flowing before the 14th of May, but we'll have to see if everyone's sorted by then.
This from Dorothy. Fair Work Commissioner Lee Johns has said that the Fair Work Commission is experiencing a 50% increase in unfair dismissal claims and is planning to expedite genuine redundancy matters. Do you have any advice around treading with caution, particularly around casuals and or redundancies?
Two really good focused questions around caution. Yes, I'd express caution. I'm sort of intrigued as to whether there's really that high an increase in unfair dismissal so far. Certainly, we have a really good sense of this because we do more Fair Work claims than any other organisation, and for our client base, just because our client base is that big. And we've seen a slight uptick in claims, but not a 50% increase in unfair dismissal claims at this stage. What I can do is give you a bit of insight from my experience as to what I think happens in general downturns like this, or even dramatic ones. So I was working as an employment lawyer during the GFC, and what you saw was this, and I suspect this is what will happen here, is that when people got made redundant, I'll come back to whether redundancy is a big issue at the moment. When people got made redundant, in the good times, what they used to say was, hang on a second, why have I been made redundant? Everyone else seems to be working. It must be that I've been picked on or I've been treated unfairly, and you'd get a lot of claims resulting from it. In the bad times, people just got the sense that everyone else was getting made redundant, so they didn't sue for it at the same rate. And actually, we saw a decline in claims during the GFC for things like unfair dismissal. At the front line of this pre-claim, that's sort of what I'm seeing at the moment. I discuss it with other people that provide employment relations advice, including employment lawyers. And the general sentiment is that the changes are being accepted by people quite readily at the moment. There's not a lot of, we're seeing bits of it, but not a lot of hostility and friction. People seem to understand that the world is changing outside our window. And funnily enough, we were looking at this in detail here and finding out that actually the number of questions we're getting from clients about redundancy is currently quite low. So we're not hearing from a lot of clients saying, I'm making people, some, again, yes, don't get me wrong, we're not blissfully ignorant to what's going on out in the outside world. But at the moment, JobKeeper does genuinely seem to be helping businesses to avoid redundancy to the degree that I'm starting to say, as I've said to you guys on a couple of days now, make sure you don't just bury your head in the JobKeeper sand. Make sure you're thinking about your long-term planning, because the low level of redundancy inquiries almost worries me a bit, that people are not doing redundancies when they should be planning. Now, as to the risks, so there's a couple of practical bits and tips in there, which is don't be spooked by that information from the Fair Work Commission. I don't think you should translate that as to being putting yourself in any different a situation. The reality is the same rules apply. You need to be very careful in the way you manage your staff. Careful is transparent, honest, open communication, frequent communication, and keep talking to them about what's going on in your workplace. And then to the extent that you're not a small business and you have redundancy payment obligations and so forth, make sure you do go through the process in the right way and make sure that you consult your staff about it and come to fair conclusions. And the same rules really apply. There's nothing special about it. And I think that actually what you'll find at the moment, that people are much more understanding and receptive.
It's from Leanne from Bernard Petroleum. I have an employee who has an FBT exempt pre-tax deduction each week. The resulting amount is less than the $750 per week. Do I pay the top up on the difference?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. That sounds a very taxy question to me that I'd ask your accountant. I'm sorry to duck and weave on that one, but FBT is a pretty messy area that I'll defer to your tax practitioner on.
From Maria, if we mistakenly put March as the eligibility test of turnover, how do we amend and put April, as we were significantly down in April and not in March?
So remember, this is a self-certification system. So it sounds what you did was make an application in April. You didn't. Did they say that they did say that they were eligible?
I'm assuming so. They just said that they.
But actually, they found out that March wasn't.
Yeah.
Look, if your April is down and you've applied for JobKeeper and you've essentially ticked the box on the business portal that's saying I'm eligible, then I wouldn't worry about at the moment whether it was March or April. Let's wait until your payment comes through, and then if you need to contact the ATO to say, does the business portal need to be updated? I don't want to be misleading anyone. Then we'll do that once the payment started to flow.
From Kim, I have a staff member that has been let go with 3 weeks pay in lieu of notice. If they're on JobKeeper, do they have to be paid the 3 weeks in lieu at $750 per week, or just on the hours they would have been rostered on as a part-time employee? Can we pay this notice in lieu week by week?
That's a really good question. The employment relations nerd in me quite likes that question. So basically, the way being paid in lieu of notice works is that you have been terminated today, but you're going to get a amount of pay in lieu of notice. You're not going to do any work for it. You're not going to be employed during those times. So that employee will not be employed during a JobKeeper fortnight. So they would only get paid what they would get for their notice. You wouldn't have to top it up to JobKeeper levels of notice for 3 weeks, because then, one, they're not employed during it, and two, they didn't work for during that period. So you would, let's say they were employed until today, which happens to be the end of a JobKeeper fortnight with 3 weeks pay, almost the end of a JobKeeper fortnight on Sunday it will be. They would get JobKeeper for this fortnight, and then for the 3 weeks of notice that lie ahead, they would only be paid what they would have otherwise earned regardless of JobKeeper. So if that's less than $750 a week, you'd pay them less than $750 a week as their notice.
Okay. Vicky says, my employee wants to claim 3 months of the JobKeeper payment. Can an employee claim 3 months, that is July, August and September, and not 6 months?
The employee can notify you that they no longer want to be nominated. So yeah, they can in principle. The tricky bit there is if you're getting this genuine subsidy in JobKeeper that the employee is working for you. And we've got a handful of circumstances like this here where the employee is working for you, and then they stop wanting to be nominated, but then therefore you lose the $1,500 contribution. What I'd encourage you to do there is just to sit down and try and have a consultative, explanatory conversation with the employee. Why would they want to stop after 3 months? Because it does impact you. It also might mean that you struggle to afford their employment on an ongoing basis. It might have consequential impacts like having to look at things like redundancy. So just try and have an open conversation with the employee.
Okay. And Ed, you've touched on this plenty of times before, but this time this question pops up from Marie. Hi Ed, we're a hair and beauty salon. I've just received JobKeeper. Can I use this to pay long service and holiday leave? I have not directed staff to take any leave.
You can, so long service and holiday leave. So two parts to that answer. You can, in principle, direct staff to take annual leave, subject to them keeping 2 weeks in balance. They can't reasonably refuse that request. That's not true of long service leave. So you'd have to agree for a staff member to go on long service leave, but you can use JobKeeper to pay it.
Okay.
So I saw one come about the COVID app there, guys. If you see that one, I'd like to answer that. It'd be cool.
From Jenny, when an employee provides a doctor's certificate to justify self-isolation due to age and risk of exposure, I understand they can make a request to the employer to take 2 weeks unpaid pandemic leave. In this situation, the employee qualifies for JobKeeper allowance. I'm confused as to how this is unpaid leave, ?
It's unpaid leave in the same sense that it would be unpaid if you just agreed that an employee didn't have to turn up to work on an unpaid basis. It doesn't change the fact that they are eligible employees because they're in your ongoing employment. And so in essence, it's unpaid by you. You're not paying them anything. All you're doing, though, is having to be the clearinghouse between the government and the employee, and you're giving them the $1,500 that the government will then give you back. So yes, I agree that the name of it it seems incorrect, but what it really means is you're not obliged to pay them, as in you won't be out of pocket long term, albeit you'll be out of pocket short term on a cash flow basis.
Okay. And apropos of your request on the COVID app, Chris says, yesterday, I think he mentioned we could insist that staff download the COVID Safe app, but I've seen press saying that Strathfield Council has been fined significantly for doing this. Everything I see is saying it is illegal to force someone to do it. I would like our work phones to have it downloaded, workforce, I'm assuming, to have it downloaded, but I also like the idea of not getting into trouble.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. Don't worry, I'm going to sit here and just check with Strathfield Council, we reckon it was it? Strathfield,
yes.
I'll have a look. There's something we should clear up. My belief, as I said yesterday, is that what you're trying to do is create a safe workplace. It just seems odd that someone would be fined for that. So workers are forced to download the COVID Safe training, and now their boss could be fined. You're right. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think that there's a lot behind this could be fined, but what it is yeah, so it says in the Biosecurity Act that you can't force people to download the app, which is quite interesting. Let me have a look at this in detail and we'll reply on it. I don't want to get you in trouble either. It seems to me that in this unusual world we're in, that you're trying to get your workplace to be safe, and the government's trying to get the outside to be safe. They can't force us to download it either. I'll have a check to see whether it would be inappropriate for you to do as an employer. We'll put something up on there about that.
Excellent. This one from Wayne, who's been tuning in, I think, almost every single day of the live feeds from Good Enough. Could you please discuss staff carpooling to get to work? Any advice or thoughts on
that? Good question, Wayne. I'm going to assume for a moment that that's either in a company vehicle or somehow related to your work, in the sense that my view is that the people getting to and from your work it is not, technically speaking, your problem. If the government is providing some sort of facility or service, public transport, whatever it may be, to get to work, then employees keeping distance and so forth in that transport is their problem. That's between them. So if it was just two guys from work driving in together, then they've got to work out what their social distancing requirements are. If you are requiring them to be together, let's say that they're in a company vehicle and you're picking people up on the way to work, you should be trying to, as far as reasonably practicable, practice social distancing. So some of the things that might seem a bit odd but could be possible to help keep 1.5 meters between people would be to have someone sitting in the back seat and not in the front seat next to you or something like that.
From Sarah, if an employee who you are claiming JobKeeper for, they've agreed to be nominated and they've signed the form, leaves mid-fortnight and they want to claim for JobKeeper, do they have to wait until we've finished claiming JobKeeper for them before they're able to apply? They will still qualify for the third fortnight, then I will remove them via STP.
We do that one again, just so I just don't get the facts wrong.
Yeah, it's convoluted. From Sarah, if an employee who you are claiming JobKeeper for and has agreed to be nominated and has signed the form leaves mid-fortnight and they want to claim for JobSeeker, do they have to wait until we have finished claiming JobKeeper for them before they are able to apply?
So my frank view on the JobSeeker, JobKeeper crossover is that JobSeeker is not really your problem or business. That's between the government and the employee. In that case, the employee is eligible for part of a fortnight, so you should be paying them JobKeeper, and they'll have to disclose that in their JobSeeker application. But so you just stick to what you've got to do and leave the employee to do what they've got to do.
Okay. And another riddle here from Mick. One of our former casual employees qualified for JobKeeper and has subsequently been paid for fortnight 1 and week 1 of fortnight 2, yet they resigned on day 2 of that fortnight, leaving immediately and leaving me to cover rostered shifts for the rest of that week. Am I obligated to pay her for the full week of full fortnight 2 or just that day she worked that week?
You're meant to pay the 1,500, frustratingly, but you've obviously got to nominate that through your single touch payroll to see. But you're in principle, you're meant to pay them if they work any part of the fortnight. You're meant to pay the full 1,500, and that she should have that passed on to her.
From Joe. With JobKeeper not starting until the 30th of March, many businesses were forced to shut down on the 23rd of March. Our staff were on unpaid leave for that week, 23 through 30 March.
Yep.
I paid an employee annual leave in the first JobKeeper fortnight, enabling me to use JobKeeper to pay the leave. But she is now querying, could that leave before the week prior to JobKeeper starting?
Yeah, I think I understand that. So you don't have the right in that week before to put them on annual leave. So on the 23rd, they would need to agree for you to pay them out annual leave during that period, and you wouldn't be able to recover that through JobKeeper because it's before JobKeeper started on the 30th. As from the 30th, you would be able to put the employee on annual leave and pay and use JobKeeper to pay it in that way, subject to the 2-week rule.
Uh-huh. And this one keeps popping up here, but worth revisiting, I think, from Vicky. If we've predicted our turnover won't drop by 30% until June, are we able to enrol for JobKeeper then, or do we have to enrol by the 31st of May?
You can certainly enrol then. The one question I'd have would be maybe your June reduction. Maybe your June reduction would mean that you could actually apply now on a quarterly basis. So it's quite interesting. Everyone's in a flutter here because the Prime Minister's speaking. Apparently, I don't want to kill off our live stream. It'll be interesting to see whether it goes up or down now. But I'm sure it'll be there at the end of this. But we'll have to see what comes up. If anything urgent comes up, we'll let you know through here. you're all staying on, interestingly. Yeah, I'll take that as a compliment that you think at least comparatively interesting to Prime Minister Morrison. But anyway, so yeah, does that answer that one?
It does. And if Scott Morrison says anything that we need to pass on, we'll pass it on.
Sure.
Selena.
Maybe if I show you Stu, then you'll stay watching. Then just to say a shameless attempt to keep an audience.
And then the figures plummet. From Selena, we've registered for JobKeeper, but now one of our employees has resigned. We need to replace them. Will the government pay the JobKeeper on that position, or is it definitely based on the individual employee who was initially eligible?
Individual, unfortunately. So yeah, we've had an interesting one here. Actually, we're looking at we've got employees that are eligible, and we've had people that start for us after March. We are considering whether we have a group of roles that need doing, and we considered whether to go and have to hire more people to do those roles. But actually, we've got other roles that are less busy of eligible people, and we've asked them on what we say a reasonable basis to move into that role because they're eligible. Helps us because we get JobKeeper funding for that, versus a new person coming into that role wouldn't get JobKeeper funding.
Okay. And just to revisit on this one, Ed, from John, we haven't got the JobKeeper reimbursement yet. Has there been a maximum time frame given?
Don't stress, John. Don't stress. We haven't either actually just yet. So the 14th of May is meant to be the maximum. So I think that's Monday off the top of my head. So just keep an eye on it. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, even if it's a day or two after. If let's say if by next Wednesday you haven't got it, I'd be picking up the phone to the ATO.
Karen says this: we are on-site managers, that is holiday short-term accommodation, and we're having a difficult time getting the owners corporation and strata management to help us be workplace ready in regards to common property facilities.
Yeah.
They want to wait and see. We want to be ready to go. Any advice?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was chatting to someone overnight, a client of ours who works in that industry, and he's saying that you've got this difficult situation at the moment that we're doing, for example, getting our workplace ready, but in buildings where the landlord will have obligations to things like common parts and so forth, there's a real slowness of people getting going on that. So it's almost like you might have your space ready, but the rest of the building isn't. It'd be interesting to see if that starts to come out more. But really, that's a discussion between you and your landlord. And of course, if you start to say, hey, you're going to be causing me business damage by not enabling me to open, then there may be things in your lease that you should be chatting to your property lawyer about, I'd say.
Julie says, we reduced staff hours due to less workload. We've claimed for JobKeeper and staff are now expecting to be paid, that is, topped up to their full hours. Do we have to top them up to their wages prior to the reduced hours or just up to the 1,500?
You do that. Well, I got distracted one by one. I'll come back to your question in a second, Stu. But Greg and Bernie here have been watching quite a bit of Tax Agent in Cairns. And they're saying that a lot of businesses out there don't know that they actually have to claim still, and that they're still seeing people that think that because they registered interest, that they're all good. And I think it's a good point. I think we've all become somewhat, I suppose, comfortable with some of the key concepts of JobKeeper doing this, and we get asked some really interesting technical questions on it. Still a lot of businesses out there that might be a bit blind to the fact as to what they've got to do. We're experts in managing our business, not experts in rummaging around in portals trying to understand about subsidies. So if you've got mates that run businesses and so on, just make sure that you're sharing information as to how we make the claims. I'd hate to hear about businesses missing out just because they didn't know they had to do something extra. So, do
you think that could account for the differential between the intention and action?
Good question. Yeah, I did. So the latest figure I've heard is that the differential doesn't sound that big anymore. So it's about, I think, 800,000 said they were interested. And I saw overnight, I think 770,000 have applied. So only 30,000 drop off, which seems quite small to me. But the government's saying that only 5 million employees are currently being claimed for versus what they thought would be 6. I suspect actually it will get closer to 6 and probably higher as the months go on. But Anyway, sorry, what was the question, Stu? Sorry, I got distracted.
Oh, Julie. We reduced staff hours due to less workload. We've claimed for JobKeeper and staff are now expecting to be paid / topped up to their full hours. Do we have to top them up to their wages prior to the reduced hours or just up to the $1,500?
Just if they're only doing reduced hours, just up to the $1,500.
Okay. Again, you've touched on this many times, but this time from Noel. Can you nominate the month of June as the month where the turnover is going to decrease by more than 30% and claim the JobKeeper payment from the 30th of March 2020? The staff member has been employed for several years, so is eligible. The months of March and April is not down 30% due to invoices being paid from prior months.
So have a look at, first of all, whether your quarter is down, and then if not, the rules seem to say that it's June that you should be looking at rather than April or May.
Yep. From Tony. We run a small business in a ski resort and I have 2 staff who have worked as full-time casuals for the past 3 years. They aren't due to start again until July. How could JobKeeper assist us in retaining them this year? We will be operating and I can find work with them, but our income will be severely reduced, so they will be doing other jobs.
So the suggestion is these guys are regular and systematic. How often do they work, Stu?
They've been working consistently for 3 years and they are not, because of seasonality, not starting until July.
So yeah, so there'd be a question mark over whether they are regular and systematic. Potentially they are, notwithstanding the fact that there's it's just on a seasonal basis, but potentially they are. If they, how would you apply for them? You'd have to wait until July as to when they're eligible. Would you? Well, this is a tricky one, to be honest, because no, if they're eligible and your business is eligible now, you can apply now, notwithstanding that they wouldn't have any shifts now in practice, because you're not only applying for them when they turn up to work, you're applying for, this is one of the tricks with the regular and systematic casuals, is that you can in essence be ending up paying them even though they might not always be earning anything. So yeah, you could potentially apply for them now, but you'd have to pay that money to them, notwithstanding you haven't got any wage concerns at the moment by the sounds of it.
From Jacqueline, can we negotiate with our staff that they will only pay the JobKeeper amount until we reopen our restaurant? Or do we need to pay them their full amount for those on a contract and possibly pay their top up when we are operating?
So you would, if you're not operating at the moment, then you would, if they're not already stood down, then you'd be using a JobKeeper enabled stand down and only paying the $1,500 until you're open. And then once you're open and they're doing either some hours or all hours, you'd be looking at whether those hours are over 1,500. If so, you just pay them normal wages. If it's less than 1,500, then you top them up. But you don't have to go back to their normal wages just because you're now getting JobKeeper if they're not doing work.
Yep. Tammy says, "Hi Ed, can you tell me, I received the JobKeeper last night for April. However, my figures for May are going to be higher than 2019 as my accounts from March are being paid this month. I did estimate this with the April-May form for the JobKeeper. Any advice would be greatly appreciated."
So you got JobKeeper last night. My figures for May are going to be higher than 29. My accounts from March are being paid this month. I did estimate with April-May form and JobKeeper. So again, you can estimate April, May, June. Sounds like you were April down, not in May, maybe in June, maybe July. At the moment, you've been deemed JobKeeper eligible, and the view is you are until you're not. So let's see how your May works out. None of us have a clear view just yet on that. See how your June goes. If you're consistently over the, less than 30%, I'd be considering ringing up the ATO and just checking what they want you to do in that circumstance, but you're fine for the moment.
And Ed, again, around the casual definition, perhaps if you could revisit it again, this time from Tina. Can you define casual that are systematically employed? For eligibility for JobKeeper payments, we have seasonal employees who work through each NRL season. They are taken out of our payroll at the end of each season and then reinstated the following year. I want to ensure they're eligible.
Who was his name of that? Sorry?
Tina.
Tina. I wonder if that's was speaking to a client the other day. There's promotional work, the NRL, whether that's the same client. So the way in which this works with regular and systematic casuals, when you say define, it is hard, to be honest, because there isn't a black and white rule. And you might have seen in the paper today, there's Cotton On have come out and said, oh, we're actually going to change the way we're looking at this to try and include as many of our casuals as we can. We excluded 200 casuals that we think might actually be regular and systematic. The best litmus test I can give you is that for me, and in the eyes of the law, this is what I'd advise any client, is that a regular and systematic casual is someone who expects regular work and you expect them to do it. So even if there is some seasonality and things like that, if you say, hey, here's a shift and you expect them to do it, that's a regular and systematic casual. The good litmus test is, what would happen if that person said no to the shift or didn't reply, or equally, if you never gave them the shift? Would either of you ring each other up and say, what the hell, where's that shift? If that's the case, they're probably regular and systematic. So using the ski resort example a moment ago, if you just went completely quiet on these guys and never mentioned about July and opening and so forth, would they ring you up and say, what happened? I thought we did this every year. In which case, they're probably regular and systematic.
From John, we've received our first JobKeeper payment, and a staff member who had originally opted out is suddenly interested in participating. Can we add them in, or is it too late?
For the first payment, it is. I suppose, well, look, I'll just pause on that. Technically, you meant to have submitted them by today. So you could go back into a single touch payroll and see if it's possible, but I've not come across yet a circumstance where you've already received the payment and that consequently you've already done your nomination. Whether you can then amend that, you'll need to go into your single touch payroll to see, but it sounds like you might not be able to.
This is from Mary. I have a staff member who had tested positive for COVID. She had returned from overseas and was in quarantine at the time, so thankfully had never come to the workplace. However, she has recovered and has full medical clearance to come back to work, but the other staff have raised concerns about working with her. Any advice on managing this situation?
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? First of all, there's so few people that have actually had contact and actually seen people with COVID, frankly, given the numbers involved. So to have actually had a staff member. So do they have medical clearance? I presume so.
Yes.
And what I'd be seeking to do is, so obviously one of the tricky things with COVID-19 and any illness in the workplace, there are privacy issues about telling other people that they are or have been sick. It sounds like all the other employees know already, so the cat's out of the bag on that. What I would be doing is getting some form of written advice from their doctor saying that they are fit to come to work. I'd then be communicating openly with your staff, bearing in mind the cat's out of the bag, and saying, look, this is the circumstance. I have sought medical clearance. Here's some information that I found online about it as well. The risk to you is nil, and that it's perfectly permissible for that person to come back to work. And try and persuade them that it's fine. If things start to get more difficult, then you're going to have to turn up the temperature on that in terms of people not being willing to follow management instructions. But you obviously just can't have a situation where you get a mini revolt and people refuse to turn up for work when there's no medical suggestion that they shouldn't.
In line with our self-imposed time constraints, can we finish with a couple of comments?
Yeah, go for it.
Jeff says, Ed, you're far more entertaining than ScoMo.
Good. Actually, I can give you the statistical now. I think I'm 10% less entertaining. I think we've lost about 10% of people. So, yeah, I'm pleased that it was Jack that thinks so.
That was Jeff.
Sorry. Yeah. Jeff, you think so. 10% of people don't. But thank you for being one of the 90%.
Nice one from Peter. Dear Ed, you've been a godsend for everyone. Thank you so much. Incredible dissemination of very valuable information. You're way ahead of the curve. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic, much better than what I received from the professional bodies of which I am a member.
Great, that's very nice to hear, thank you. The one thing I'm definitely not ahead of the curve on though is this point about the COVID app. I'm going to go and have a look at that, it's fascinating. Slightly worryingly, the only article I've got on it is from the
Daily
Daily
Mail.
Mail. So I'm officially behind the Daily Mail in my employment relations today, which I'm ashamed of, and I'm going to go and quickly sort that out. So,
And finally, this one from Vanessa, which just seems to sum up, I guess, the feeling of relief. She is a client from East Lake Swim Centre. Enjoying some breathing space today. JobKeeper arrived overnight. Loving your midday streams. Thank you so much.
great. Good stuff, Vanessa. I've seen you watching a bit. So thank you for your business, first of all, and do enjoy that breathing space. Like I say, let's not take a bit of time maybe over the weekend, feel like you've had that lease of life with JobKeeper, but let's make sure next week we're not burying our head in the JobKeeper sand.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend. See you on Monday.